Hey guys, it's Matt. Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Reality, which is a much more serious presentation. I've always been interested in the history of Native Americans. The Canadians call them First Nations people, Indians, the people that have been here, that were here before the Western white settlers. Always been interested, never really dived into the research. Like to make a video about it once a month. The history in terms of the names are all around us, and most Americans don't even recognize the state of Delaware. Most Americans don't know that the state of Delaware is an Indian tribe, that the Illinois basketball team, the Fighting Illini, this is based off the history of a group of American Indians or Native Americans, that came together as a unit. To protect themselves. It's carried through in ridiculous sports names. The history is carried through in the names of towns and states that nobody thinks about as they stumble out of bars. So I want to try to do this once a month or once every other month at least, and look at the history. And we can, imagine what it would be like as you're living in the late 1600s as part of these Native American tribes. And to get word that this white man, this settler is coming off the boats. And it would be like that scene in Dances with Wolves to a degree. Where is it 10 Bears is talking to John Dunbar, and he pulls out the conquistador hat and says something like, "These men have come before, and they have left, and when they have not left, we've driven them back." And not having any understanding or comprehension of what New York City would look like in the mid-1800s, or what the polluted Pittsburgh would look like. They just would have no comprehension, the parasite that the Western settler would be with their city and industry. They mostly probably would be like 10 Bears. So a few will come and they will go. No comprehension whatsoever, and not blaming them for having no comprehension. Nobody would be able to foresee the parasite. Literally, just go watch Tom Cruise in Far and Away with Nicole Kidman, and living conditions, and the just endless, as Bill Cutting said, the endless foreign hordes coming off the boats, and we're here to throw pavers at them. The endless foreign, and I'm not saying foreign. Most of us have an ancestry, of course, that goes back to another continent. It is what it is, but to the Native American, it was a parasite. And I just want to explore, if we could imagine, when did they get wind that this is not just a few people coming and going? And when did they get wind that this is a very serious situation that's going to completely upturn a 30,000 year, to a degree, way of life? We want to think, maybe the Indians have been here a few thousand years, right? Well, I don't really trust the science like the T-shirt says down at the mall, but it is being reported now that the earliest Native Americans were here 30,000 years ago. Does it really matter whether it's 5,000? It's a long time. It's an amount of history we can't even possibly imagine. And then here come, as Bill Cutting said in Gangs in New York, the endless foreign hordes coming off here they come off the boats to disrupt everything inside of, let's just say, a complete upheaval inside of 100 years. A massive disruption inside of just 50. Now, I doubt the new Leonardo DiCaprio movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, is spectacular. And people are saying there's some severe problems with it, but there's some excellent elements to it as well. Even if it just gives me a tiny glimpse into, again, the plight of the Native American, and I have my guard up that the history presented in movies isn't exactly entirely accurate. I am aware of that. But, even if we don't have a complete understanding of the history, we're pretty good at seeing through bullshit, wouldn't you say? So I think, in terms of what the real history is, I think that even that movie will help. But, what do we have in terms of, potentially a 30,000 year culture? We have Dances with Wolves. We have The Lone Ranger. We have I mean, a Native American assistant following around a black and white TV show character named Yancey Derringer, who they make out to be an absolute idiot. I mean, we have some media, but we have a few books. But I mean, we have state names and we have football team names and basketball team names, and it's just something that's I don't know. I feel like we should look into. I'm not going to make it 10% of this channel, but I'm going to do something once a month. I think the purpose of today's video, again, is just, this video is not for somebody that's like listening before a dentist appointment. For somebody that wants to smoke them if you got them, grab a beer, relax, turn the lights down. We're going to imagine, what was it like for these Native American tribes to get a sense that these people, the fallen hordes, were not going away this time. Now, this thing we study called not milk, that a Christian calls Satan, this dark element here, it's a very interesting comparison in terms of a sliding scale. The Western settler it started back with Peter Stuyvesant, our friend. We're going to touch on him a bit, that's life. Peter Stuyvesant, late 1600s into the 1700s. Of course, William Penn, Penn's Woods, Pennsylvania, the establishment of Philadelphia, New York, then the gigantic industrialization of the big cities like New York and Chicago through the 1800s. That's the group on one side of the comparison scale. On the other side, put the Native Americans. Now you can see how not milk had this dark thing here had completely infiltrated this group over here, the mostly white settler from mostly Western Europe. A not milk complete infiltration could not be more of a 10 out of 10 in terms of serving the needs of the asshole dark. In terms of a group that you would say the not milk likely had not infiltrated, would be the native tribes, the people that have roots going back a long, long way, not just the Native Americans, but tribes of South America or Africa or different continents. Okay, I'm not saying they're not warring with each other. I'm not saying that they're doing the right thing all the time. They're perfect people. But it does seem like maybe Not Milk wasn't even aware of these people. Who knows what this dark thing is? But you can see it was in a rush to bring its technology up to speed and use its technology of today as its new spellcraft. And it used the Western world to do that. You have a group that has not been infiltrated by what we call not milk, and a group that almost 100% has been infiltrated by not milk to spread the society and culture out the way this dark thing wants. Now, this is the area where our group will never find common ground with most of the people around us, our family and friends. We see a dark influence. Our family and friends, it's just the way a modern society evolves. And Matt, if the Native Americans had access to certain technology or certain inventions had been made, they would have progressed via the Industrial Revolution too. There'd be no difference in terms of, as our friends and family would describe it, how when large groups of people get together in cities, how those cities would progress and how culture would spread. And I mean, there's just no way the people in our group, we see how artificial and how dark this force is, that obviously, it somehow infiltrated the West to do its bidding, and it's still going on today. And any group carrying an ancient knowledge that doesn't want to be part of this not milk society and culture, well, the not milk has chosen through its minions, which everybody in the 1700s and 1800s and early 1900s and mid-1900s, on its download, on its radio station, on its frequency, it chose those groups who will follow willingly, without knowing what they're doing, to steamroll over the ancient tribes and cultures, as it does every time we do not milk travel tours. It's really no different. What did they do to the natives in Borneo? What did they do to the natives in Tasmania? They steamroll them over. And if they don't do it literally, the story of alcohol introduction to Native Americans is real. Okay, it's very real. Unlike in stupid high school history tests, dates and times are kind of important in understanding how this potentially played out for the Native Americans versus the foreign hordes. And we're going to try to imagine the best we can what it was like. Okay, yeah, Matt, from the comfort of your own home? That's not very legit. What do you want me to do? Sleep out overnight in the snow in just a Speedo or so? I mean, I'm not going to do that. Yes, we're going to do the best we can. At least we're trying to get an understanding that goes beyond Dancing with Wolves and Hollywood motion pictures. Okay, no, I'm not going to sleep out overnight in a Speedo in the snow to understand what they really went through. And they had, their TP technology with the fire in the middle. I mean, it wasn't shit. I'm sorry. Okay, let's just stay on the damn point here. For our purposes here, we'll use the Jamestown settlement in Virginia, 1605, as, say, the first footholds for the foreign hordes that will follow. Sure, there's no doubt Leif Erikson and the Vikings came and went from time to time, or 200 years, 300 years before that. I mean, who knows what the story of Christopher Columbus was? It's so, there's so many problems with it at this point. It's so not nilk. Likely never even landed on what we call the main part of the United States, North America anyway. I mean, forget the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, and those hoopties. Forget those hoopties. That's not part of our history. It's too not nilk. Flush it right now. Sorry, Christopher Columbus, Columbia, the District of Columbia. No, thank you. That's not part of my history. Flush it. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Sounds like 3 cars cruising on Crenshaw that just got hydraulic lift kits. So 1605 is our starting point, Jamestown, the first trickle of the foreign hordes. The next significant moment was not too long after. History, as it's reported to us, who knows how much of it can be believed, maybe just 5%, but it says 1620, the Mayflower. That's right, the Pilgrims. They land, whatever Plymouth Rock is, that just pops into your head. What is Plymouth Rock? I don't know. It's not good for a ship to hit a gigantic rock, but it was a Cape Cod area or Massachusetts area. And Denzel Washington playing Malcolm X in the movie says, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Why is he taking it out on the Pilgrims? Leave them out of it. Whatever happened to Denzel Washington playing Malcolm X representing the Nation of Islam, and whatever happened is not good, but it wasn't the Pilgrims' fault. Leave them out of it. The next significant moment on our timeline is 1681, the land grant to William Penn for basically what is Pennsylvania. Now, here's the history of it as it's presented to us. Absolutely mind-boggling. William Penn's father, Sir Admiral William Penn Sr., somehow a loan to the crown was made. It says 16,000 pounds. King James's name comes up, but the land grant to little William Penn Jr. was made by King Charles II. So it doesn't matter. At some point, to settle a debt, or maybe little William Penn, on behalf of Dad, went into the court one day with the jesters, and I want to see the king, damn it. It's good to be the king. And he says, oh, yeah, we knew your father, Sir Admiral William Penn Sr. Oh, yeah, that 16,000 pound debt. Like, why would the crown need a loan from William Penn's father? Whatever. Let's just leave all that history out of it. This is too damn fascinating and funny. He says, okay, we'll let you want. Oh, you here to settle up? Oh, fine. What you want, little Willie? Then we got to eat. We got big feast in the next room. Be done with it quick. Well, King, you've heard of the Quakers, and I'm one of the key leaders of the Quakers. I want to take our faith, Quakerism. Can you put ism on the end of Quakers? I don't even know. I'm just taking that liberty, Matt, myself right now. I want to take Quakerism to the New World and recruit followers there. I'd like some land, sir. Oh, okay. We got a lot of it. After the French and Indian War, we got loads and loads. I don't know what you want. 20 acres? 20 acres and a mule? Or how about 40 acres and a mule? You want... not exactly, sir. A little more. 50 acres? No, I was thinking the entire landmass between the New York colonies and what Lord Baltimore has established in Maryland. I was thinking, say, 45 acres. What did you say? I was thinking 45,000 acres. Speak up. Sir, I want 45,000 square acres. Are you drunk enough to give it to me? Look, we got all the land in the world out in that dam after the French and Indian War. Take it. What are we going to do with it? Fuck it. Write it up, 45,000 square acres. Now let's get to the damn food. We got 45,000 square acres for basically $16,000. Now, what's so sick about this, it's almost funny. There are tens of thousands of Native Americans and at least 4 or 5 major tribes living in that area. Did the king check with them? It's his. and now it's William Penn's. And well, there's what you call Indians there. Fuck them. What are they? They don't own nothing. We own it now. We won the French and Indian War, not them. They just got in our. Well, they assisted you. Some took the side of the French. Some took the side of the British. Didn't you see the movie Last of the Mohicans? Look, Willie, that land is my land. I'm the king. It's good to be the king. I'm giving you that small section of it, 45,000 square, whatever you want. If you need more, let me know. If it gets a little tight for you and your 12 people, let me know. I'll give you some more. What you call Indians or anybody gives you a problem, you have them talk to my emissaries. We'll straighten them out. You tell them that land's yours, Willie. Stand up to those heathens. And that story documents the first time in history a massive amount of territory was wiped out by the greater power, simply taken away from Native Americans and given to what they would consider to be the invading foreign hordes. Of course, it had happened before that to a lesser degree. I mean, the only thing that kind of eclipses something like that is things like the Louisiana Purchase. We're not going to get to that. But, for example, Peter Stuyvesant, our good friend, 1650 or so, the governing director of New Amsterdam. It wasn't called New York. The Dutch, Holland, the Dutch, the Netherlands. I'm from Holland. Isn't that weird? They controlled that area until the British came and the greater power just kicked him out. Off with you. Just kicked him out. And they took over and we named it New York. But Peter Stuyvesant, see, what's the name of the river? Where Sully Sullenberg landed in that questionable story? Sully Sullenberger landed in Bueller, anyone but blank economics, the blank river, the Hudson River. Another native. Everything's like a Native American name. You just don't notice it. When I went to Penn State, all the names of these houses, this horrible floor in Snyder Hall and Geary Hall, little cement beehive cubicle things. But this area is called Algonquin House. I didn't think two shits about it. This one's called Alquippa. All these different names. They're all, well, not all of them were Native American names. A lot of them were related to even cities around Pennsylvania. I didn't think crap about it. It just was another floor in a shitty dormitory. The Native American names are all over this country. Not just the Washington Commanders who were called the Redskins, Tallahassee, Florida. These are all Native American names. There's thousands if you comb through a map and town names and things like that. People notice about 1%. What about Davenport, Iowa? No. So getting back to Peter Stuyvesant, of course, that monster displaced many Native Americans. There were almost 50 tribes, or at least portions of almost 50 tribes in New York State in the 1600s. Names you've heard of, like Seneca, Shinnecock, Lenape. Is that right? And then there are even maybe parts of the Delaware. There were a lot of tribes. And just like it doesn't matter whether they're from Holland, isn't that weird, or from Britain, or from France, or Germany, or Spain, or all the colonial, they all do the same things, actually, everywhere in the world, to the native tribes and indigenous peoples. They displace them, disease them, and kill them. Speaking of our good friend Peter Stuyvesant, even before he was governor of New Amsterdam or whatever his stupid title was, he has a 2 or 3 decade-long history of attacking native and indigenous peoples, like in the islands, in and around Jamaica and the West Indies, I believe. That's where he got the peg leg. I'm not joking. He got a peg leg. That's the Stam High School, Peter Stuyvesant High School in Lower Manhattan, just a few blocks away. It's still there, but it was a few blocks away from North and South Tower. I believe they're still called the Peg Legs, the team mascot. I'm not joking. I went to Upper Merion High School in a strange named town called King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. It just rolls off our tongue like that's normal. But you say it to people around the country, around the world, like, what? Where the hell are you from? Your town was called, what? King of Prussia? Yeah, but this gigantic, ugly mall is, anyway, it was Upper Merion Vikings. So if we played in baseball, say, or football, Peter Stuyvesant High School, it would be the Vikings against the Peg Legs. I'm not joking. As I said, I believe in a book chapter, it does not make for a particularly intimidating track team. But to wrap this section up, Peter Stuyvesant, in trying to kill indigenous people, in this case, it might have been the Arawak Indians or the Arawak natives of certain island nations, I don't know exactly which islands they are, took a cannonball. How did he take a cannonball? That's the story as I remember it. But no, these natives, Matt, don't have cannons. I don't know. Maybe he was so stupid he was standing in front of his own, shot through the back of his leg. I don't know, and I don't particularly care. Peter Stuyvesant, thou art a villain. His great-great-great-great-grandson today is a billionaire. Anybody surprised? Once you get inside that dragon's wing, oh, you're taken care of. I doubt they'll ever change the name of that high school like they ripped down the Christopher Columbus. They love Christopher Columbus too, of course. But it's a sacrificial thing to make it seem like a government that really cares, not a government that establishes the turmoil and the racism to begin with. Okay, there are a lot of, quote, milestone events we could talk about, but to put it in very general and broad terms, let's just say the establishment of the United States in 1776 was not particularly a good thing for the Native Americans of what you would call this landmass. Not particularly good. You know, they would be like Chuck D in this regard. Most of my heroes don't appear on no stamp. Let's just say to Native Americans or older Native Americans that understand history, July 4th they're not singing Christmas songs for Christmas in July. They're not running around, Native Americans, right before the 4th with fireworks going, it's the most wonderful time of the... No, they might do a little something to blend in, but typically they're not probably thrilled. End of Andrew Jackson's presidency, 1837, Trail of Tears. See, there's a lot of things where it's like, get him west. There's a lot. See, the land used to be, like it was given away to William Penn. It used to just be thousands and thousands of square acres. Nobody cared. And then it started to get, as the invading foreign hordes came, and then it started to get a little cramped in certain areas. But out west, oh gosh, the Nevada Territory, not states yet, the Arizona Territory, the Wyoming Territory. Well, there's nothing out there. There's a rattlesnake every 20,000 miles and a well every 2 million miles. There ain't no water and ain't a blade of grass for 3 or 4 of those states. And it just, Andrew Jackson, send them west. Get them out of my neighborhood. Send them west, he said. Sir, you're sending most of them west on one trail, and they're already starting to talk, already starting to name the Trail of Tears. It's starting to take hold, sir. And you know what he said back as he did another shot of $4,000 cognac? I don't care. And from the perspective of, say, Native Americans today that are over age 50 or 60, that are still... 70% or 60 or 70% Sioux or Cherokee. I mean, the worst group to them, those that are slightly awake and who not-milk infection at this point is spread to every group. The download or a radio station is spread to every group. But those that are awake, and then there's probably more inside of a Native American community than other communities, of course, because of their tribal or indigenous ancestry, which did not spring out of not-milk, where Western ancestry can be traced basically directly to the original fountain spring of not-milk. They probably really despise the most the Canadian liberal types that try to make up for the past injustices via all the bullshit and false celebrations of today. Where was the last Canadian Olympics? It was the First Nations people were presented over and over again. And first of all, none of the chiefs should have participated. I mean, they should have said, "Fuck you, Eskiston ski instructor Trudeau or whatever is. What a clown he is." But for other, they did participate, which they shouldn't have. But those few that are awake. The liberals, the ultra-liberalism that tries to make up for it and say how friendly we all are to you people now, and First Nations this and that, and celebrate, and they can see, a few of them can see how false it is, how pathetic the presentations from, say, the assistant ski instructor is Trudeau. What a clown. So there's tons of Native American history that nobody ever talks about, that nobody knows about. There's something that came to my attention recently. I never knew about it, of course. The Iroquois Confederacy, a confederation of 5, later 6 Indian tribes across upper New York State during the 17th and 18th centuries, played a strategic role in the struggle between the French and the British for mastery, it says here, of North America. The 5 original Iroquois nations were the Mohawk, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, Oneida, Oneida, Onondaga, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, Tuscarora, okay? Albany up and more west. Now, we talked about what was it like when they finally got a sense that it's not just a few Westerners or white people coming and going, that these groups are spreading in amounts and numbers and that we just can't possibly fathom until they actually see it happening. And the way Dunbar put it in Dances with Wolves, he didn't know how to describe it. He said it's the numbers finally tried to come clean with Kickingbird. He said like the stars. Like the stars. And he got a sense. He said, "Oh man, 10 Bears doesn't realize this. This is a parasite that we will not, in this case, be able to get rid of." Now, history says there's no exact start date known, at least, for this Iroquois Confederacy of various tribes in New York State. Some say it could be as early as late 1500s. Some say almost 1700. But no matter what the history says exactly, I mean, we are allowed to use our own intuitions, right? And because history has been presented in a false way so many times, we're allowed to ignore a whole section of what's presented. Is there any doubt, use your inner knowing, that this Iroquois Confederacy was a reaction to the foreign invader? The Hordes. It's not just stories anymore. It would be credible evidence that there are huge populations in what is called, at that time, New Amsterdam, but New York, Lord Baltimore, Penns Woods, Pennsylvania, and the establishment of Philadelphia. It would have been more than just stories at this time to the Native American tribes. Again, we're focusing on upstate, western, and middle New York. Much more than just stories. And there's no doubt in my mind, again, I don't, the history is unclear, but to me it's clear that they got together and they said, it's time. Like Longshanks, Robert the Bruce's father with the leprosy said to Robert the Bruce about Longshanks, it's time to survive. The stories we hear, these growing cities and towns, and the foreign invading hordes coming off the ships. The Seneca might not like the Shinnecock or whatever. We better band together. And then if it wasn't that strong, the start of the French and Indian War, 1754. Remember, 1776 was the establishment of the United States. 1754, the French and Indian War. George Washington was a lieutenant or lieutenant colonel in the French and Indian War, where he got his military, which carried forth to the Revolutionary War. See, these American Indians and Native Americans observe that these people come here and all they do is wage war for the most part. French and Indian War, go watch The Last of the Mohicans. It is probably very accurate, very accurate. Can I guarantee that? No, but that one is, it's very historically accurate, in my opinion. Just wage war up and down through Pennsylvania, New York State, up through Quebec, and just all the Native American, this group, this invading and foreign hordes arrive, and all they do is expand like a parasite and wage war amongst themselves. And even before that, the stories like 10 Bears had about the conquistadors. He had the old helmet, the old Spanish helmet of a conquistador. He said even these groups wanted to wage war. They probably thought, how sick. Now look, I'm sure, again, these people weren't perfect, and they fought amongst themselves, and they're still human, of course. But you're not, whatever the little tribal battles were, you're not comparing that to the way the Western, quote, colonial powers wage war and destroy indigenous populations. You're not comparing the two, are you, sir? Really? Come on, sir. You can't compare them. Western powers, they steamroll the entire continents over. They enslave and they destroy indigenous the world over. They war with themselves on multiple continents. It's not like what was depicted in the movie Dances with Wolves, where, yeah, sure, they warred with each other from time to time. I'm sure the Native Americans, in the movie, the Pawnee are on the warpath. And 45 Pawnee come in, and there's a little mini battle with the Sioux, and I'm sure that a lot of that happened. But that's like 1 tiny little drop in the ocean compared to what these horrible colonial Western powers did the world over. I mean, just think about it. I mean, think of just the British by themselves. I mean, somehow they took over the Indian subcontinent. How do you even do that? Who knows how much history is correct? But to say it plainly, they fucked over India. I mean, look, I don't know how to say it more plainly than that. No matter what exact history is correct or not, I don't care what exactly about Gandhi is correct or not. In general, they fucked over India. They fucked over China too. Didn't they addict about 10% of the population to opium, which is poppy, which is heroin? I mean, every time we do not know travel tours, the same thing. When we find an indigenous people, we find them running from a colonial power. So don't relate that. Don't say, well, the Native Americans war too, Matt. Oh, come on. Really? It's like one little drop compared to the Pacific Ocean. To conclude this section, let me just read this one paragraph. It says it all. We don't need to know anything more than this. This is just repeating theme happened over and over again. After the migration of a majority we're talking about the Iroquois Confederacy. After a migration of the majority to Canada, to live along the St. Lawrence River, the Iroquois remaining in New York were required to live mostly on reservations. By 1784, a total of just 6,000 Iroquois faced 240,000 New Yorkers, with land-hungry New Englanders poised to migrate west. On Oneidas, I'm sorry for the mispronunciation of the tribal name, Oneidas alone in that tribe, who were only at this time 600 strong, owned 6 million acres, or about 2.4 million hectares. The massive land owned or attributed to the Iroquois, it says here, was a land rush waiting to happen. What the heck? By the War of 1812, the Iroquois had lost control of considerable territory. Oh, you think? Gee, that's unique, right? That's never happened to the Native Americans before. That Knottnilk, we just looked at this theme, the gold rush, how artificial that was. Need people to push west. Need the masses and the great unwashed to go west. Oh, tell them about gold and throw some fake gold nuggets in the river and all the stories will spread. And just a constant push west. In my opinion, people would have ventured out and tried, but not as quickly as it would have happened in the way it happened without absolutely the Knottnilk behind all these pushes west and the displacement of the Native Americans. Guys, it doesn't really make sense because you can go to upstate New York today. It's pretty darn deserted. If you drive the Pennsylvania Turnpike, which is this just straight shot highway between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, once you get on the other side of Harrisburg, which is only about an hour and 20 minutes from Philadelphia, there's a 3-hour part of that drive, 3 to 3.5 hours, where there's really nothing there. I mean, yeah, there's small towns and there's some farms and you see some. It's 99% or more, much more open land. Then you go through some mountains. That's in 2024. You think it was? Why would the Iroquois being pushed out of lands in, it's the late 1700s? When large parts of upstate New York is like the middle of Pennsylvania today, like there's nobody there even now. I mean, it just doesn't make the whole history, of course, guys, just doesn't make a lot of sense. What we do agree on, where we disagree with our family and friends, is this script, this theme, this long-term, multi-century story that plays out is driven by something very dark we call the Knottnilk. We see it. It's plain as day we see it, where our friends and family will always have a way to explain it away. They don't see it. It's just the way things happen as modern times take hold, Matt. So getting back to what it would have been like as a Native American in one of these tribes, it would have gotten pretty serious. The stories and the talk, I think, would have gotten pretty serious in the late 1600s, the very late 1600s. Yeah, there would have been some rumors of certain people. Maybe in certain areas there's some trading, some fur trading, and some interaction, of course. But most Native Americans wouldn't be interacting in the 1600s with any Western or white settler. But the stories certainly would travel. But look, you've got again with Lord Baltimore or whoever the heck that was, and you have the New York settlements, and you have Boston being established in Philadelphia, and okay, not a big deal. But right as you push towards the big thing that I'm sure got the Native Americans' attention big time, if anybody wasn't on board as to how serious this was the French and Indian War. What did I say? It was 1754 or so. Now, if you don't know the history on this, guys, the name is misleading, the French and Indian War. It's simply the British against the French. Okay, that's it. That's brought into the name, the French and Indian War, because for the first time, the Indian tribes, as depicted in The Last of the Mohicans, did pick one side or the other and were a big part of the war. But the war is simply the British against the French for North America. But for the first time, the Native Americans, and the stories would spread to the others who are not involved, see the destructive power, the destructive nature of the West, and just the way they wage war, these Western powers, and the power of the cannon, and complete forests being trampled down. I mean, the impact on the land by these Western powers was something that the Native American probably couldn't fathom. And once the French and Indian War started, and for certain areas, the carnage up and down a 3-state, or up into Quebec territory, and this is a weird group here, and I'm not sure, sitting around the campfire, they're saying these people aren't going to go away. It's just going to get worse. And what was that point of no return, which fascinates me, where they just knew, okay, this is bad, and it's not, this pendulum is never going to swing back in our direction. What was the date on that? And it was different, of course, state to state or tribe by tribe. But I would say, one of the main points of this video or presentation is, I think the French and Indian War was the big catalyst. Once they saw that happening, and how big that was relative to anything they'd ever seen before. They've seen the Western settlers with their muskets and things like that, but the cannons and some of the scenes depicted in Last of the Mohicans, I think it was 1754, where I believe most of the Native Americans, per the French and Indian War, and even if they weren't right there in the middle of it, the stories, the eyewitness stories, would have spread, and of course, as usual, they did pull the native tribes into the French and Indian War, as depicted in Last of the Mohicans. The Mohawk, what was his name, Magua, in the movie is on the side of the French. My French father, he says, he's French. What does my French father tell? But he's infiltrating the British on behalf, right, of the French, the Mohawk. But then there's other tribes, of course, that are. So somehow this Knotlk, not the French and the British got the tribes to split, the Knotlk itself got the tribes to split and split their allegiance in the French and Indian War. And per this confederacy, it seems like after the French and Indian War, they're able to unify a bit. And it's pretty impressive considering all the tragic stories with the Native Americans throughout the United States and Canada, and it's all over the world, but I can't speak to that history. It's pretty impressive what this confederacy was able to do for as long as it was able to do, if you look into the history of it. So guys, I think that's what I wanted to talk about. And if you like this sort of presentation, a little bit different paced, I'll look to your comments and we'll do more of it. Well, means look at the history, see what history resonates with us as real, see what part of history, as usual, doesn't jive with what our inner knowing says is real or true, and then try to get a better picture ourselves as to where this history went down. Thanks for listening.